Hello everyone. A very good afternoon. I would like to thank you all for joining us today. My name is Aparna Haldar and I'll be hosting this webinar. Before we get started, please let me take a few minutes to introduce Payatu. Payatu is a research-powered cybersecurity consulting firm. We have a decade-long track record with a singular focus on cybersecurity. The foundation of Payatu rests upon three pillars: community and conferences, consulting and training, products. Community and conferences encompass NullCon, an international security conference training and exhibition platform. Hardware.io, a hardware security focused conference along with other initiatives. Consulting and training focuses on thorough security assessments, which helps businesses to discover security threats and further provide training to strengthen network infrastructure. Lastly, we have three offerings: IoT Auditor, an IoT security testing and compliance platform; Exploity, an open source IoT security testing framework; CloudFirst, an automated and highly scalable first testing platform. Here is an overview of the various consulting assessments we are known for across the globe. Payatu has delivered many cyber talks and workshops in top security conferences that also include Black Hat and DEF CON. We take pride in the decade-long impact we have created by contributing to the cybersecurity community all around the world. That was all about Payatu. Today, Sanjay Das, Payatu's security consultant, will deliver a webinar on Final Secure Code Review on WordPress Plugins. You can read all about him on this slide. Before I hand it over to Sanjay, I request you all to follow a few housekeeping tips. Please be on mute. If you have a question, you can write it in the chat box. We will answer the questions during the intervals or at the end of the webinar. We will be releasing the recording of this webinar on our digital channels, so make sure you are following Payatu. If you are not currently following Payatu, please check the links provided in the chat box to find Payatu's digital channels. Without further ado, let's get started. Sanjay, over to you.
So yeah, hi everyone. So today in this webinar, we'll be going through the manual source code review of WordPress plugin. So basically in the recent months, what we have done, we have kind of reviewed different plugins, and based on that, so we have come up with this white paper. So this will be I will be following this white paper only throughout this webinar, and we'll go through some of the techniques that we can look through. What is the entry point of the plugin and different code structures, and some interesting vulnerabilities as well, so that we reported in different plugins. And then so basically how to ease the review. So there are some of the automation part as well that we can do. So we have contributed different WordPress plugin rules to SameGap registry. So we'll look into that as well. I mean, how we can utilize all those rules to ease the review. And from existing part, if you guys know, there is something called PHP code sniffer that's kind of used for your coding standard. If you are aware of the plugins, then in many of the plugins that I have seen, developer use PHP code sniffer. So that's kind of a rule set for maintaining the coding standard. So we'll see that also, how we can use that to automate some of the process and to find the vulnerabilities as well using this PHP code sniffer. And then how you can report the vulnerabilities, when if you have found any vulnerabilities. So this will be pretty much a structure of this talk. And then so what we are going to do for now, so we'll skip some of the parts, let's say setting up the environment, how you can set up your environment in VS Code. So this is kind of a the environment that we are going to follow. So we have VS Code. We'll use that for all the source code review purpose. We have PHP Xdebug installed for debugging purpose, and you can, and we have this PHP debug extension in the VS Code that will be kind of responsible for the connecting the code base basically. And then we have burp for inspecting the traffic, and then this is kind of a WordPress where WordPress is hosted, so Apache MySQL PHP. So you can we'll be releasing this white paper after this talk, probably in 1 week, and then you guys can go through the if you want to set up the environment, you guys can go through, and it contains everything that you need for setting up the environment. So now what we'll do, we'll kind of uh, we'll just generate some of the random. So basically, the idea is to we'll generate some random number from, let's say, 1 to 100, and then based on that random number, whatever random number comes, we'll look into the let's say we'll focus on top 100 plugins, and we'll generate a random number, and then let's say if the random number is 52, then we'll look into the 52 plugin, and then we'll see like how we can go through it by following just this white paper. So let's generate the random number, and then we'll kind of go through. So I'll just before that, this is kind of a WordPress plugin. So here you can see there is a section called popular plugin, where you can see all the, so currently the top most popular plugin that WordPress has is Contact 47, followed by Yoast SEO, Elementor Website Builder. And so yeah, this is kind of a, so we'll choose any of the plugin from here from top 100, and then we'll see. So let's generate the random number. Probably so from 1 to 100, I think top 100 should be fine. So okay, 18th. So like in one page, 20 plugins are listed probably. So we can choose the 18th one. So this will be 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Okay, so that is kind of WP mail, SMTP, YWP forms. So let's look into this plugin. So the first thing, obviously, to look into the plugin will be like their official plugin page. So every plugin that is kind of open source has this structure where you can just follow this structure, and then this page will come up. So inside this page, you can see some of the details that is kind of important. So obviously what you want to see is like if the plugin is kind of in active development or not, what is the last updated date. So you can see its last update is 2 months ago. So that is kind of good. Active installations, how many people are using. So the WordPress version that it's supported to. So you can see it's supported to 5.2 or higher, and then the PHP version. And then so it's good to read the description as well, kind of like what exactly this plugin does. So by the name also, WP mail SMTP by WP form. So it's kind of like for sending the mail and setting up the SMTP server, I guess. Like from the mail, and obviously from the description, I guess. So it's better to read the description, and in some of the plugins you will see that they kind of give the YouTube video as well. So it's better to look into the functionality as well, what exactly this plugin does, and like some interesting functionality if there is any, and then looking into the code. So so here also they see, I think they have mentioned about security as well. But no one does plugin, but we have several options. So yeah, they have mentioned about like what exactly they does for following the best security practices and the credits. So yeah, let's download this plugin. So one more thing would be sometimes like what you can do. I mean, before looking into the plugin, so there are two major platforms that is kind of responsible for like you can see all the vulnerabilities over there. So like the first one is WP scan, and the second one is like I'm not able to recall, but let's see. So if I'll just search WordPress plugin, or we can just look for WP, because I just go for WP scan and it's kind of good. So yeah. WP scan also followed this kind of structure. You can see WP plugin, and then you can just give the plugin name. So I will just copy. Okay, so WP email SMTP, and you can see like the existing vulnerability that it has. It kind of give you the the gives you a clear picture on what exactly people are reporting, and so you can see this is kind of fixed in 1.4.0, and this was the vulnerability that was authenticated cross-site scripting. So sometimes you will mostly see in these plugins what is exactly the problem. So they don't give, I mean, what exactly was the problem and everything. So for that, what you can do, that okay, so before this 1.3.3 it was vulnerable. So you can kind of go to the development section and then browse the code. So here you'll kind of see like what exactly, I mean, this is kind of a basically the code-based management system that the WordPress itself supports. So you can see all the, the commits, all the version change and everything that you can see on the GitHub kind of thing. So you can see it over here, and from here, probably, I mean, you can just look at the diff on basically the version. So let's say for now, I will be looking at kind of 1.3.9 and 1.4.0. So yeah, that will be kind of the things that you can look. So okay, so now let's look download this plugin. So what we'll do, we have some of the scenarios in the white paper itself. So suppose if this plugin does not kind of fulfill those scenarios, so we'll again generate some random number and then see, and then we'll see that okay, the second plugin has that kind of code base or not. So so let's download this quickly. So again, for downloading the plugin, there are two ways. You can directly go to, so I have this like WordPress setup in my local. So you can go to the plugin section over here, and then from the here, let's say if I'm just clicking on admin, you can just search there on their plugin install.php page, and then install the plugin and then kind of activate the plugin from here just by searching. And the second way would be to download the source code from here, put it in WP content private plugin directory, and then activate the plugin. So we'll be following the second one. Yeah. So let's this is WP WordPress like the home directory, basically base directory, not the home directory, sorry. So let's go to the plugin section and let's download this one. Okay, so it got downloaded. Let's unzip it. Perfect. So I think the name was WP mail SMTP. So probably, yeah. So we can see all the source code and everything. So let's open this in VS Code. So I'll just go there. Okay. Okay. So basically, like now we'll go through like what is exactly the entry point of the plugin. So here, so like I mean, how exactly the WordPress knows that okay, it's a plugin, because like if you'll see inside the plugin, there's a lot of file, like there's a zip file as well. I mean, how exactly does like WordPress note that okay, it's a plugin, I have to treat this as plugin. So that is kind of a starting point. So there is there should be at least one file with the name of, usually the convention is, suppose your plugin name is let's say WP mail SMTP, then the file will be WP mail SMTP.php, the same name. That you'll see in most of the cases. In I think every plugin I have seen, in one or two plugin, they don't follow this convention. But the major thing that should be there is kind of these headers. So here you can see like these are the headers basically defined. So this is that's how WordPress knows okay, so this is kind of a like the plugin. So I have to treat this folder as a plugin. So in this you can see there are different headers. All of them are not required. The one thing that is for sure required is plugin name. I mean, if you don't define it, WordPress does not know. So you have to define the plugin name. The rest of all the things, the metadata, basically you can see the author URI or the plugin or anything else is optional. You can skip that part. So this is kind of a main, you can say, the entry point of the plugin. And here also you will see that like all the things should be defined here, like basically what exactly the plugin is doing and everything. So yeah, let's go back to this one. So white paper. So yeah, so you can see the plugin name is like it's a mandatory field and other fields are optional. So coming to the code structure of the plugin, of course, like suppose if you are reviewing some code bases, and it's important to know what exactly they are following. I think that kinds of help you doing the source code review. So what I have seen is WordPress does not recommend, like there is no standard to develop a plugin. I mean, you are free to develop the plugin in any way. There is no standard as such. But like I've seen in most of the plugins, they kind of use the MVC structure. I think you guys are most aware of it. It's a very common known architecture when developing like any kind of code bases. And the second one is slash. So slash was something kind of new architecture that I came across in some of the plugins that I reviewed. So yeah, like you can, I mean, this blog kind of gives you a better picture of what exactly slash does and how exactly the architecture is kind of followed. So yeah, like you guys can go through it later if you want. So the slash name is basically this one, the first structure of singletons, loaders, actions, screen, and handlers. So that's why the plugin name is, the architecture name is slash. Yeah. So let's look into the techniques now, the actual part, the vulnerability part. So there are some of the things, basically the authentication part. So authentication, when you kind of, log into the authentication part, let's say if I'm just logging here, so this is the WordPress core part that is kind of, so authentication part is kind of handled via the authentication core. So you don't have to worry about that part. So let's look into the authorization part. So this is kind of an important part, and we'll focus on this part for a while, because you will see there are different ways to handle the authorization part, and there might be the cases that you will be able to find something in the authorization section. So before that, let's activate the plugin as well. So we kind of installed the plugin, but the second step to so after putting your data into this WP plugin directly, basically in this WP plugin, now you can see your plugin here. So if I'll just go to install plugins, I can see WP mail. Okay, so okay, let's go there. It's loading. Just give it a second. Okay, it's kind of slow. Oh, well. Okay. Yeah, so here you will see all the plugins that you have installed and whether it is activated or not. So let's search for, I guess, WP email it was. No, what was the name of the plugin? WP email, but I think the name you can see from here. WP mail SMTP. So this is the plugin basically. So here, whatever you have defined, right? Like here, all the metadata that will be kind of used by the WordPress to show it over here. So you can see the description part is coming over here. Whatever you write here in the description section will come over here, and all of other metadata that you have. So after downloading the plugin, you have to activate it. So let's activate the plugin. So I think it's a WP mail server, so probably after activating it, when we'll go through the WP mail, it will kind of, yeah, I was assuming this, so it will kind of ask you to go through, like set up the the SMTP server. So let's get started, and then probably it's asking different things. So we'll come back to this as well. So from the code perspective, let's look into some of the things, and then if we'll be able to set up, then we'll look at where the functionality part as well, or else we'll choose some other plugins, and then we'll see if it's easy to set up, and then we'll do that. Because like obviously we are short on time. So let's the first thing is authorization part. So you'll see that basically the Ajax call that is from the WordPress, that is kind of handled via these two hook. That these two are the hooks provided by the WordPress itself, by the core WordPress. So the first one is WP Ajax, and this is the action part, and the second one is WP Ajax no pre action part. So the difference between these two is this no pre, as the name suggests, anyone can fire this hook. So suppose if you have registered any hook with this WP Ajax no pre, then unauthorized user, any user can fire this hook. But this WP Ajax, if you have to fire this hook, you should have authentication. So it does not matter what kind of authorization you have. You can have a contributor role, you can have subscriber role. So there are different roles in like in WordPress itself. So basically the top level is admin, and then there are some other roles. So based on that, but for that, you just need any role, and then you will be able to fire this hook. So that's basically the difference between these two. And then so this is kind of a add action. So again, this is a WP core function that is kind of used to add this callback, and then the action part. So this action part is nothing but where exactly, so suppose if someone is triggering this hook, so there will be some action to you will do something, right? Like there will be some callback function kind of thing. So that's what it's being used for. Yeah. And then obviously this is kind of a WordPress admin ajax.php WordPress code. You can see over here that like it requires the action parameter in the request. So in the request means like you can pass the action parameter in the post request or in the get in the post body or in the get or in the cookies anywhere, and then that is kind of good. So let's look into any of if there is any WP Ajax function in this code. So I'll just search for WP Ajax. Okay, we have, yeah, so that's great. So yeah, so basically these are some of the hooks. So again, you can see, this is a like anyone can trigger this hook, WP Ajax no pre, and then the callback function is processed. So if someone is calling this hook with this action tag, basically this will be the action tag, and then this will get triggered. So now basically the idea is to go through all of the Ajax call. So there are a bunch of Ajax call, and then see what exactly is the authorization, how they are handling it, and that is kind of bypassable or not. So let's look into any one of them. So this is kind of interesting because it's a public one. So let's look into this function. And there is this callback. So obviously this function is defined in this page only. So I'll just search for function. Okay, so we have this call here. Error. Okay, so they are just defining the error, and then so they need bunch of stuff, probably a request, and then they are sanitizing it. So okay, so this WP unslash is kind of an interesting thing. We'll go through this when we'll come through the SQLi part. But for now, let's assume that this they just unslash all the codes, and then so they are escaping the they need the file as well. And then okay, so they are just sending if these things are not there. They are getting the option. So this get option is again a WP core function for it's kind of a dictionary key value pair where you can set this somewhere, and then if you want to get it, you can just call get option, and that will be you can just get that basically. So let's look into the main part where exactly they are handling the authorization part. I think that will be kind of interesting. So it's I think they are not doing anything sensitive, probably. So that's why they don't have anything set as such. Or else let's look into this quickly. So basically, okay, so they are verifying that if the pro is installed or not, and then so they are calling this request file system credentials, and then okay, and then based on the URL, not so like we have to look into this what exactly it's doing, and then doing bunch of stuff. So you can see in this case, I mean, we don't see any authorization that is being done, right? So suppose if this function, this callback, basically, where was the hook defined? Yeah, this hook. So we can call this hook, and we can call, like, we can control this process method basically. So suppose if someone is doing something sensitive out of it, basically this will be a vulnerability, right? Because like anyone can control it. It will be kind of authenticated plus something, the vulnerability name. So yeah, that is one of the things. So let's look into some of the plugin, I mean, some of the hooks where the authorization is there. I think so that it will be easier to like see. So this is kind of a Ajax generate URL. Let's look into this. So is there any? Okay, so in this also there is, I don't think so, any. Yeah, okay, here. So here you can see there is a one check, current user can install plugin. So basically this is kind of a good check to have. So again, this is a WordPress core itself function where what you can do, there are a bunch of different authorization checks. So like it's just saying that okay, the current user, whoever is kind of filing this hook, has the permission to install the plugin or not. So yeah, this is kind of a good check, and after that it's doing a bunch of stuff, right? And then there is kind of interesting this. So there is very interesting thing in WordPress plugin that is called nonce. So I mean, nonce is basically used like for like the preventing the CSRF kind of attack. But here the thing is, like basically, so let's look into that part. So basically, whatever we have to do, you have to send this nonce, and then the first thing that it will check is whether that nonce is valid via this check ajax referral. So so yeah, so the nonce part. So this is kind of again the randomly generated that is used to prevent the vulnerability. So basically, if you generate this via this WP create nonce, this is kind of valid for 24 hours. So usually you will be thinking that, okay, if it's a nonce, then it will be used only once, but that is not the case. I mean, you can use the same nonce multiple times. And if they are kind of generating the nonce via this WP create nonce, and they are not passing any what I can say, like the value time stamp, then that is kind of by default valid for 24 hours. So yeah, and then one interesting thing is, so this nonce, whatever you generate with this WP create nonce, that is kind of related to your session. So that means that many people, what they do, they don't check this current user can, and they just check this check ajax referral, because anyway this nonce is generated to the session, and they kind of assume that, okay, so user has the permission, and they don't check this stuff. So that is kind of bypassable in some of the times where you can leak this nonce, and then obviously you have the control to this this function. We'll see one of the use case that that was kind of like this. So yeah, basically that is the use of nonce. And so let's look into that. So there was one finding that we reported. Okay. Okay. So let's look into the interesting scenarios quickly. Yeah, so this was the plugin. Basically, the plugin name was insert WP code plugin, insert header and footer. So inside this, this is kind of a steps to reproduce kind of thing. Let's look into the code. So here you can see the same thing, WP Ajax. There were a bunch of hooks that were defined, and all were like Ajax auth URL, store auth URL. So this was kind of related to the what you can do. You can connect your WP code plugin to the WP code library. Like they were giving some library, and from there you can download some of the PHP code. So that was kind of a functionality. So and then if we look into any of the let's say Ajax auth URL, you can see there is only one check, that was check Ajax referral WP code enemy, and there is no authorization check as such. So they are kind of relying on this check only, and that is kind of a you will see this case in many of the plugins. And WordPress specifically mentioned that nonce should never be relied for the authentication, authorization, or access control. Protect your function using the current user can. But in most of the plugin, you will see that developer kind of rely on this nonce check only, and if that is bypassable, you have the control of that that hook. So now the matter was to just leak this WP code admin anywhere, because obviously it's coming from the UI, right? So suppose if that is kind of leakable, like from looking into the source code or any other way, and then obviously we have the control. So here you can see there was one this WP class library or .php, and that was kind of accessible to any of the authenticated user. So what they can do, you can see, and inside the localized script, they were passing this, they were generating this WP code admin. So now any authenticated user can go to this WP code library auth, get the nonce from here, and then pass it to this, and then obviously you can control any of the basically their WP code library. So that was kind of the vulnerability. The same is discussed over here as well. So here you can see the observe the response. So if you can, I can zoom it a little bit. So you can see like there was this endpoint, and you can see the nonce. So the same nonce, you can this nonce will be used to access. So this is kind of a normal admin Ajax space that you will see that is related to any of the basically any of the WP Ajax. So how to trigger this WP Ajax will be this one. So there will be one page. So all the Ajax kind of request is handled via this WordPress core admin ajax.php. What parameters you have to give? Action that we have discussed, and then the nonce. So nonce is kind of we were able to control the nonce, and then action to just trigger that, and then we were able to like control the library. So yeah, look into the endpoints and then see how the authorization is being done. And if it's just via the nonce, then try to see where exactly the nonce is getting generated, whether we can control the nonce or not. And then yeah, that's all basically. The one interesting thing in this when checking for the nonce, like let's say here check ajax refer. So this kind of takes 3 parameters, and in the third parameter basically what will happen, right? Like so suppose like basically what you can do, so suppose if it's not passed, then it will fail and it will give you a -1 directly. But the third parameter you can control. By default it's set to true, but suppose if some developer can pass just a third parameter as false, then not false. So what will happen, this check will be useless, because suppose if check fails also, then also you can this code will, like basically the flow will continue, it won't stop here. So that is also one signature that you can look for, like whether the third parameter of this check ajax referral is true or not. So these things we have covered in the SameGrep plugins, SameGrep rules, sorry. So we'll go through that also, rules, if we have some time. So yeah, and so basically then there is so that was almost all things related to the like the ajax endpoint. So now we have something called REST API. So the plugins that I have reviewed, I have come across only one plugin where that was kind of necessary. They were using the WordPress REST API thoroughly, or else in other plugins I didn't see much use of WordPress REST API. But yeah, these are some of the hooks that is kind of responsible for adding your API endpoints. So the API endpoints is nothing but you might have seen like if you have installed, so there is WP-JSON, and then you can give any of the, let's say, WP v2 users, and then it can sort of give you all the like the users, right? Like if you have pen tested any of the WordPress application, then you might be knowing. And so yeah, basically that is the thing. So those routes, basically whatever comes after WP-JSON is kind of by default there are some of the routes that comes from the WordPress code itself, but obviously you can define your own endpoints, and then that is kind of done via the register REST route. Inside this again, the interesting parameter to check will be permission callback, because this is the callback that is responsible for the authorization part. So whether how exactly they are like handling that, so who can call this route. So and then suppose if that is not defined, then that is a public, you can call it publicly. And then suppose if that route is doing something, then obviously you can control that part. Or else suppose if it's just returning true, then also in that case also it's a public, and if it's doing anything, you can control the route. So yeah, so now let's look into the SQLi part. So I mean, there are a bunch of basically this WPDP. This is a class of WordPress, and this contains, okay, so it's opening. So this contains there are different basically the methods, you can say, that it has, and some of them are vulnerable, some of them are not. So you can see if so yeah, so you can if I'll just search for some. Yeah, so see, one is WPDB query. Like that we have WPDB prepare for making the prepared statement, and we have different basically functions. So some of the functions are unsafe, like let's say WP prepare are safe. This function is safe, but like this WP query, this is unsafe. If you are if the developer is directly using let's say this WP DP query, and then there is some user function that is controllable inside this, then you can get SQLi. You can, I mean, let's look into the one of the SameGrep rule quickly. So these are all the SameGrep rules basically. Okay, so it will take some time. I mean, I'm not sure why SameGrep sometimes takes time, but okay, let's go. Yeah. Okay. Meanwhile, what we can do, we can just look for, let's say WPDP, if there is any, and then yeah. So there are bunch of, again you can see. So they are using query, and then let's say this. So again, obviously you can't control this. This will be hard coded somewhere, and then there is no. So like this, you can check for some other interaction. Let's look for some. So these are kind of hard coded. So obviously we can't do anything. Let's look into some others. WPDP get result. So WP, where was that? Yeah. So there is this SQL, and then this is a SQL. So okay, here also everything is hard coded except the prefix part, and that obviously you can't control. So yeah, like that. I mean, you can look for different. So here also there is a SQL, and then if I look into so truncate table, and then table is coming from here. So okay, this is kind of a fix. So again, WP prefix, and then this is hard coded. So obviously we can't do anything. So like that, I mean, you can look into. So here you can see. So they have this table. I think it will be controllable by the user, or because like they are using the prepared statement. So here you can't do much stuff because obviously it will be a prepared statement, and then there will be no SQL basically. WP escape like. So yeah, so this WP escape like is again a kind of a function that is used whenever you are using any of your user parameter in the like statement. So here you can see they are using in the like statement, and that's why they are using escape like, and then they are using the prepare also. So this is kind of a good WPDP prepare. So like that, I mean, we can review for some of these. Again, WP query is there, and then primary key. So here probably okay. So here they are using the prepare, because like we can see that there is this row ID that is kind of controllable, I guess, but like they are using the WPD prepare. So like that, okay. So you can see, so these are some of the patterns that is kind of vulnerable. So WPDP query, get where, get row, get call, get result, replace, and then these are some of the parameters, basically the function, sorry, not the parameters, that is kind of not vulnerable. So prepare, delete, update, insert. So these are kind of like basically like you can't do much there. So yeah, you can get a list from here, and obviously for all the list, I mean, I think here like there are 4, and then how much, like 6, 4, 10 of the patterns are mentioned. But like if you want some other patterns also, and so you can look into this WPDP class, and it has all the basically the function that it has. And suppose you let's say this get column or some other function. Okay, get result is another basically the function. So that's how, I mean, you can look for SQL injection vulnerabilities here. One of the things that kind of makes SQLi hard in WordPress plugin will be the magic code part. What exactly this magic code does? So WordPress by default, right? Like suppose if you pass any of the parameters in WordPress, let's say in any of the requests in the plugin, WordPress code by default adds the magic codes. So you can see the code of it. So this is kind of a WP core line number here. Like you can look into the file by yourself also. So they are kind of add the magic code. So what it does basically, so whatever codes or anything you pass, right, like it kinds of escape that codes. So, and by default, this is applicable. You don't have to do anything. WordPress support does this by default. So I have seen multiple instances of different WordPress plugin where the plugin was kind of vulnerable, but due to this, I was not able to bypass, because like obviously they were using the magic. WordPress was adding the magic code, and I was not able to escape that part and control the basically the query. So yeah, this and for that you will see that we came across this WP unslash, right? So that is kind of used to remove those slashes. So suppose if some developer is, they don't want these magic code, right? So you can use WP unslash to remove all the escaping part, basically the magic code that the WordPress adds by itself. So again, you can look for the SQL injection. If suppose if someone is like using this WP unslash to remove the magic code, and then again they are using that variable, let's say in the SQL statement. So yeah, then obviously there will be SQL. So and then so sometimes so suppose, I mean, this is also kind of a, so sometimes what happens, right, like you I mean, it's hard to, so like suppose if it's a big plugin, then it's hard to navigate like where exactly the functionality is going on and everything. So for that, what you can do, you can kind of control the plugin directly or as well. So how you can do it? So like MySQL, WordPress supports MySQL. So you can enable the log just by here, like by adding this configuration file, and then you can look for the queries. So you can just like monitoring those log files, and then suppose in the UI itself, let's say if there is some functionality, let's say we have this functionality of the input text, we can just pass, like obviously we can't control anything here. Let's say if we can control some of the fields here, we can just pass that as some string, let's say in this case unique string, and then look for that, grep for that unique string. And then suppose you kind of see like here, I mean I am tweaking some of the functionality of some plugin, and that is kind of reflected in the WP post, right? So and then obviously, so right, like your query, basically whatever you are passing from the plugin UI, that is kind of getting into the SQL statement. So now it's just a matter that okay, they are doing it properly or not. So what you can do, you can just pass the single quote, double quote to see. So in this case, obviously it was a WP post, and that is kind of used for handling all of your post in WordPress. And for that, this table is used, WP post. And I believe they might be using the native, basically the default WordPress code, so that was not exploitable. So you can see if I added any codes, that was kind of escaped. But like this is again a good way to if you like, if there is some functionality that you want to cover, and just by visiting the UI, so you can just do that and then see what exactly is inserting into your like basically making the query like you do for accesses, right? So this is kind of the same way we can do for SQLi as well. Yeah, so that was kind of it for the SQLi part. So we have one interesting finding for the SQLi. We'll just go through that, and that was in sorry, not this one, this one. Yeah, let it go. So yeah, so this was in Elementor plugin. Okay, it's taking some time to load. So let's look. Okay, so let's give some time. Yeah. So let's look into the vulnerable code snippet directly. So here you can see this is valid URL, right? Like that was kind of controllable. Basically this from and this to, that was kind of controllable. And they were doing a bunch of checks. So they were just checking that whether that is URL or not. And this is kind of a filter that is PHP function. You can check like how exactly this. So basically it validates all the the characters that you are passing is in the like URL RFC or not. If it's not, then obviously it will remove that part. So that's what this filter val does. And after that, like they were directly using WP query, and like whatever you pass from the from onto, they were directly using it. You can see replace string replace here, and they are directly using in the update statement, and they are using the query. There is no prepare statement, so we can. This is kind of a SQLi if we are able to bypass this check. And obviously there are different things that we can do. Obviously we can't use a space, but we can use plus. So that was kind of bypassable. And then yeah, so basically you will see here. So this was kind of, I mean, this was kind of the payload and basically the exploit. So that so basically this was it was in update statement, right? Like so this was kind of a blind one. So we just have to like give some sleek payload, whether that is select or not. So you can see I was just extracting the version name. So and then if that is kind of true based on this character set string.digit. These are some of the things that version supports, right? So like that, and then after that, like it was sleeping for 2 seconds, and if it's not correct, then obviously it was not. So run this payload, and it was kind of gave basically the Ubuntu version, right? Like basically the MySQL version. So yeah. So again, look into, I mean, how exactly like we can just search for WPDP query in this case, and then see, okay, so this is kind of a controllable, but there is only one check. And if you know like database, then you might be knowing that, okay, instead of space, we can use plus, instead of, we can use different statements, and you can bypass some of the stuff. Instead of a space, we can use percentage comment basically. So yeah, those are some of the things that, again, but just by looking at the source code, you can look and then you can exploit this part. So yeah, that was kind of for the SQLi part. I will go through the same XSS. So in XSS, I mean, the one thing that is kind of important is the admin or the editor role, right? Like that kind of, whenever, like suppose you are editing any of the posts or doing anything, so by default, admin and editor role, right, that have kind of permission to add unfiltered HTML. That means, suppose if you are, let's say if I'm creating any post, and then if I'm just inserting any of the HTML, let's say some payload for XSS, and that will be executed, and you will see that, okay, I get a pop-up, nice pop-up. And then I mean, we assume that it's kind of XSS there, but by default, what happens, right? Like the admin and editor have the permission to add the unfiltered HTML. I mean, obviously the HTML that will pass will not get sanitized, escape. So when you are testing for XSS, especially in plugin part, make sure that you are not either of these two, and then you are kind of getting like able to execute any of the JS, then it's good. And suppose if you are admin or editor also, and then also you want to test, so what you have to do, there is this config file. Inside that, you just have to like add this line that just say that just disallow unfiltered HTML to true, and then even the admin or editor role does not have the permission to add any of the unfiltered HTML. So yeah, this I mean, you can do when you are testing for the XSS part. For the functionality wise, I mean, obviously, so what we can do, we can let's say we have some of the, let's say, code snippet, right? Like this is I think the basically the WP code plugin. Yeah, it's a WP code plugin, and here we have a bunch of stuff, right? Like you can see, we can add another new stuff and everything. So sometimes you can just go by the functionality wise also. So like if you, I mean, if there is a huge code base and you don't want to go ahead, like see what exactly, so sometimes this also helps just by looking into any of the code snippet, and then seeing like okay, so let's say if this functionality looks interesting, then we can just look into that. Let's say if you use this snippet, and then we can look into basically the like how exactly this is handled basically. So suppose by looking the source code, so even sometimes in one or two plugins, I kind of did the same thing. So there was some there was some XML functionality related, and I kind of assumed that, okay, that we can get probably XXC over there. So I didn't get XXC, but I got code injection there. So we'll see that finding as well. So yeah, like functionality wise also, you can go through everything. And then yeah, so you can set the breakpoint obviously as well, and then you can like sometimes it becomes hard to debug the plugin without breakpoint. So obviously, like you can set the, like we have that slide, right, like where we set up all the environment, so you can set up the debug point and then see what exactly is the going to flow. Okay, so this is also kind of nice, this PHP CS filter. So what exactly is this? So again, this PHP CS is kind of a code sniffers, like generally it's used to maintain the code standard, but this has kind of some security rule as well that security people or developers use. So, and sometimes what they do, right, like, so suppose this PHP CS filter, if it's raising that, hey, there is a SQLite, you are not escaping the payload, basically the input that is coming, and you are kind of directly using that. But for bypassing that, or for just commenting, ignoring that check, there are some of the strings that you can use that PHP CS supports, like ignore file, disable. So sometimes it's better, let's say, let's look into this ignore. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so basically, I mean, these are basically all the filters that we can use. Let's go to that. by mistake I clicked on that, sorry. So we can look for some of the PSPCS filter if it's there in this plugin or not. So here also you can see, right, like they are using PSPCS. So we can look into, let's say, ignore for now. Yeah, and then so they are ignoring bunch of stuff, right? Like, okay, so PSPCS by default must be raising some security vulnerability here, or some vulnerability, not security, some rule set that was kind of violating, and then you can they are just disabling that. Okay, it's a WordPress DB violation. So like that, it kind of becomes helpful in some of the cases when you can directly look for all the where they are directly ignoring, and then see that, okay, if they are ignoring any of the statement, any of the basically any of the cases where there could be a SQLite. So I'll show you one of the scenario. I think we looked into this Elementor part, and then here you can see, right, like they were kind of using the PSP. So coding standard is nothing but PSPCS. So they were kind of they were kind of using that like they were kind of using that filter to remove that violation part, and then they are stating that cannot use WP prepare because it removes the backslashes, right? And they were needing, I think, backslashing, and that led to the SQLi over here. So that these filters also you can use to fast track your code review part basically. And most of the plugins they do they kind of use this PSPCS. So here again they are kind of removing the nonce verification probably in this. So you can see, like, they are just ignoring that verification part. So this is kind of good. It's just for like looking into the code and then see if they are doing something wrong. And then there are some other basically functions as well. That is kind of you'll see in many of the pages. So suppose here if you kind of see all those nice pop-up, right? Like when I click on Yoast SEO, you can see general settings integration. So these are kind of done via this add menu and some menu page. Current visual can we saw that is kind of related to authorization function. Add filter is again for like if you want to add some filters. Short code is kind of good as well. I mean, you guys can have a look at it. So yeah, and then some of the interesting vulnerabilities that we came across. So this repo basically contains all the vulnerabilities that we reported, and it's kind of, I mean, you can see the steps to reproduce, and then we can you can see the basically the source code as well. So you guys can go through this as well, like if you want. Some of the interesting finding was this one. So again, we have like this was in WPX All Export Pro. So we have a blog for that as well. So let it load. We can discuss some other. We already saw this where there was some nonce leakage, and then any authorized can call the endpoint because like they were just relying on the nonce part. We saw this admin plus SQLi as well. And then this was kind of interesting Premium Key plugin as well. So there is this plugin called Anywhere Elementor. So in this Anywhere Elementor, I mean, this is kind of a simple plugin. If you see the source code of it, they are just kind of using the add source code method for doing some of the stuff, and there was nothing much. But in their pro plugins, there were kind of various functionality that they supported. And then the pro plugin subscription, basically that was handled by Premius. So Premius is a third-party software that kind of so suppose if you want to integrate some functionality that is kind of pro that someone pays so that they can access the functionality, you can do via Premius. So but in this what was like when looking into the code, I saw that basically if you look into this one, so they were kind of leaking the secret key, and then this is kind of a Premius secret key. So it was commented out obviously, but the thing was, so what we can do, we can so what I did, I uncommented this part and then reloaded the plugin. And after that, like Premius has some functionality where what you can do, you can test your subscription wala part, and they give some free some credit card for free just for the testing purpose, right? Like by enabling, if you have this secret key enabled. So I kind of did the same, in uncommented this code and installed the plugin, and then I used this test credit card or what Freemius gave. You can see all those credit card on the Freemius website. And then I was able to make the purchase without paying anything. I was just using their Freemius. So this was kind of an interesting vulnerability as well. So you can just look for secret key like this, like this pattern, and then probably if you find, then obviously you can check for the vulnerability, like whether that is kind of like working or not. So right. So yeah, even this was nice. There was this. Okay, this is not reachable. So yeah, so this was this one. Again, the automation part is kind of we discussed about this PHP code sniffer wala part, where there are some of the standards that are the rule set that is responsible for the security part. So you can these are all the snips that is basically responsible for the security part. So you can see the CSRF protection, prepare DB, and these. So basically these are some of the snips that is responsible. So you can, what you can do, you can set up PHP-CS and you can run this, or these snips. These are the snips related to basically security standard. So you can run this, and suppose if there is any violation, then obviously you can look into the code. So what exactly is the violation, and then that leads to the basically any vulnerabilities or not. So that is kind of like to fast track where exactly to look into the code instead of manually going and looking everywhere in the code. You can use PHP-CS. And then the second is SameGrep tools. So what we have done, okay, so we have created a rule set in SameGrep dev registry, and like we have basically, so it's just loading all the rule set. You can see, so we have kind of 11 rule set that you can use. You can just run all these rule sets and then basically see what exactly, I mean, where exactly there is any violation, or we can how we can use this. So these are the basically the rule that is kind of imported from this WP Scan cheat sheet wiki. So this is kind of a good wiki that WP Scan team has, and they use this wiki internally as well. So this was just a conversation with one of their security researchers, and they mentioned this. So this is kind of a good review. So what we have done, we have kind of imported this, all the rules that you can see in the SameGrep in the SameGrep tools. So you can just run these rules and then see what exactly is the case. So we don't have time, or else we would have just run this. So you just have to set up SameGrep and then run this -config p WordPress, and this will run all the rules basically in the rule set that it has, and then it will give you the basically the findings. Okay, and then sometimes what happens, right, like you have let's say you have different so many plugins over here, right, like and you just want to run your SameGrep rules in one of the plugins. So what you can do, you can use this SameGrep ignore file and then put the rest of the directory which you don't want in the SameGrep, and SameGrep will basically SameGrep will ignore all those directories. And then there is another thing. So suppose if you guys are running this rule, then one thing you have to take care of is in every rule you will see that there is some path, right, like this one. So this path should be there. So this path is just there so that like if someone is firing this rule, they in non-WordPress, let's say some PHP, there is some PHP application in that. So this rule should not get fired, right? So that's why for that protection, we kind of have enabled this path where there should be this path, WP content plugin, and then there could be anything, and then followed by the PHP, basically the PHP file. So suppose if you want to run all these plugins, so you kind of have to follow the same structure. Go here and then run SameGrep basically rules -config and then p/WordPress. And then here only you can set your SameGrep ignore file also. So you can see I kind of set all those. I thought of running it, but we don't have time, so we can skip those parts. So yeah, that's how you can run the SameGrep rules, and then like to ease the review and see where exactly we can look for vulnerabilities. So that kinds of fast track your source code review. And then so suppose if you find any vulnerability, then you can directly contact the developer. There are some of the ways to directly contact the developer. The first way will be to look into the plugin page. So here, if I open any of the plugin here in the development part, sometimes they tell that, okay, so you can see, right, like this is kind of by the WP forms. So like that, you can see where exactly I can report this vulnerability. If you want to contact the developer, or suppose if you don't want to contact the developer, then you can just submit the vulnerability to WP scan team, and they kind of takes care everything. I mean, they will contact the developer, they will assign the CV to you, and then everything. So you don't have to do anything. You just have to fill a minimal details over here, and then that's all. You just wait for them to reply, and then they have some basically submission term here, how exactly they fast track your submission based on the installation, based on the vulnerability that you are reporting. And then yeah, I mean, after that, like you can read all the submission terms here. So in basically I have linked that on there. These are some of the important links. The one important links will be these roles and capabilities, because obviously if you are looking for authorization type bugs, then these roles and capabilities is something that, I mean, you can look for, because like, yeah, because WordPress has different roles and capabilities, right? Like there are multiple users, so you can just look into, I mean, what exactly each user does, and then you are kind of bypassable. You can see, right, like so editor has these roles, author has these roles, contributor has these roles, and then we have this role table. So this is kind of nice. So only super admin can create site. Um, only activate plugin can be done by super admin and administrator. So this is kind of a nice roles and capabilities if you are playing on the authorization vulnerabilities. Yeah, that's all from like my side. Over to you.
So the session is open for Q&A. If you guys have any doubt, please put it down in the chat box. So Ankit Goli is saying this entire process not specific to analyze WordPress plugins only.
Like whatever we have seen, right? Like it's kind of mostly related to the WordPress plugin, because like we have done everything on the WordPress plugin, but like there are some of the things in the same grep rules, like some of the interesting functions, right? Like some of the vulnerabilities that you can run on the PHP rules as well. So yeah, I mean, if that was kind of your question, then yeah. Can you please share some resources to get started with SCR? I mean, like if you want to get started with source code review in PHP itself, I'm in PHP, and then let's say in the WordPress itself, I think we'll be sharing this white paper. You can go through it. I mean, it contains, I think, all the details that you kind of need to get started with that.
For
Okay.
the recording, you guys have to stay tuned on our digital channels. As soon as the recording is out, you'll find the update in there.
Shall you please share resources, secure coding standard on? Shall you please share resources, secure coding standard on WordPress? Resources, secure coding. Okay, so yeah, so basically in the white paper itself, like there are some of the things. Like WordPress has a separate kind of a folder structure only for what you can do to follow all the security coding standards. And then obviously what you can do, I mean, like basically the rules that we have created, right? Like the SameGraph rules, you can use those rules as well, the PHP CS rules, or let's say the SameGraph rules in your, suppose if you are maintaining any WordPress website, then you can integrate those rules in the CI/CD pipeline. And then, yeah, I mean, you kind of follow that coding standards. So yeah, is there any alternative to SameGraph? Like for the PHP part, I mean, CodeQL is there, but like CodeQL, as far I know, CodeQL does not support PHP. So SameGraph kind of support this PHP. And for the WordPress plugin itself, I mean, obviously there is PHP CS also, so you can use that part. Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing I would say is start from like pick one language. Let's say if you want to source code review in PHP, then get the understanding of how PHP basics basically in the developing side, so that it will be helpful for you when you kind of look into the code. You understand what exactly is going on, and then obviously, I mean, there will be times where you don't understand what exactly is the functionality, what exactly is this function doing. Then you can just go ahead and search about that, and then learn about that, and then do. But like the basic of that, like let's say if you are reviewing on PHP, then basic PHP knowledge you gain from any of the videos, and then start reviewing it, and then in parallel you can learn about some of the functions and what exactly the code base is doing. So yeah, and then we have this secure code wiki also that we have maintained. So you can look into that secure code wiki as well. I mean, that contains some of the resources based on the framework, based on the languages. So even that kind of helps. So yeah. So it's a secure wiki from Payatu. So I'll quickly share the link if I find. Yeah. So I'll share this. Yeah. Secure.
So, any more questions? All right, I guess there are no more questions. Thank you, Sanjay, for this amazing sessions, and thank you, participants, for being in this webinar.
Yeah, yeah, I'd like to thank you. I think Suraj, if he's in the call, I think he's our lead, and he kinds of supports, and so thank you, Suraj, if you are in this call, and then thanks Aparna for hosting this, and thank you everyone for joining. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. So let's just end the session. Thank you for participating in this particular webinar. Have a happy weekend, guys.
Thank you.